Hey guys, today I'll show you how to solve quadratic equations using completing the square. But before that, I'll tell you what is the meaning of completing the square. If we have x plus 3 squared, we know that the expansion gives us x squared plus 6x plus a constant which is 9 because 3 times 3 gives you a 9. Earlier it was not completed, the square was not completed, but now we completed the square by adding a 9. Okay, in the same way, if we expand this x plus 4 squared, we end up with 4 times 4, which is a 16. In the next one, I have x minus 5 squared. 5 times 5 gives us a 25, and it's positive because negative 5 times negative 5 gives you a positive 25. This one is 64. Okay, now before I go to this one, let me explain what's the relationship between the coefficient of x and the constant. I want you to take a close look at these numbers. You see 6 and 9, 8 and 16, 10 and 25, 16 and 24. If you take the coefficient of x and you divide by 2 and you square it, you end up with a 9. Okay, 6 divided by 2 is 3, which is the number we have here, and squared gives you a 9. If I take 8 and I divide by 2, square it, I get a 16. Negative 10 divided by 2, square is a 25. Negative 16 divided by 2, square is a 64. So I have a trinomial here and I want to complete the square. So in order to complete the square, we know that we have to take the coefficient of x, divide by 2, square it. So that's the number that goes in here. So you can say b squared over 4, or you can just say b over 2 squared. Okay, and we said the number that's inside the parentheses, that's the number that we have here, right? Negative 16 divided by 2 is negative 8. Negative 8 squared is a 64, and negative 8 is the number that we had here. So the number inside the parentheses here is b over 2. So x plus b over 2 squared is x squared plus bx plus b over 2 squared. So in order to complete the square, you always take the coefficient of x and you divide by 2 and you square it. So now let's do a few examples where we solve quadratic equations using completing the square. So let's take x squared plus 14x minus 38 equals 0. Now we'll see how to solve this using our completing the square. Okay, so in order to solve by completing the square, the first step is to have the constant on the other side. So we'll add 38 to both sides. That gives us x squared plus 14x equals a 38. And we know the process. We have to take the coefficient of x, which is 14 in this case, divide by 2 and square it. 14 divided by 2 is a 7. 7 squared is 49. You add a 49 to this side. Now to balance the equation, we have to add it to the other side. And then we have to factor this trinomial. So in order to factor this, we have to find the factors of 49 that adds to give us a 14. Factors of 49 that gives you 14 are 7 and 7. And we know it's a perfect square trinomial, so we have to get the same number. So we can just take the square root of 49, which is a 7, and say it's x plus 7 squared. Now, if this number is a positive, you'll end up with a positive right there. And if it's a negative, you'll get a negative. So this is equal to 38 plus 49 is an 87. Now we are trying to solve for x, use inverse operations, and then solve. So take square root on both sides. You get x plus 7 equals plus or minus square root of 87. Whenever you take a square root, you end up with a plus or minus sign. And then subtract 7 on both sides. That gives you x equals negative 7 plus or minus square root of 87. So you can put the answer in this form, or you can say it's negative 7 plus negative 7 plus square root of 87 and negative 7 minus square root of 87. Okay, let's do another problem. What if we have x squared minus 12x plus 23 equals 0? Okay, the first step, make sure the constant is on the other side. X squared minus 12x equals negative 23. After that, you have to take the coefficient of x, divide by 2, and you square it. That gives you negative 6 squared, which is 36. Add a 36 to both sides. Factor this trinomial. We know it's x minus, okay, if you already know it's 6, just go ahead and say 6. And if you are thinking how to get that, you are trying to find the factors of 36 that gives us a negative 12. The factors are negative 6 and negative 6. So x minus 6 squared. That is equal to 36 minus 23 is a 13. Now, inverse operation should give you the answer. Take square root on both sides. You get x minus 6 equals plus or minus square root of 13. And then you add 6 to both sides. That gives you 6 plus or minus square root of 13. Or 6 plus square root of 13 and 6 minus square root of 13. Okay, what if you have something like this? 3x squared minus x equals a 3. Now, in this problem, you see that the constant is already on the other side. But you have a coefficient in front of the x squared other than 1. So if that's the case, you have to divide by this coefficient. Okay, you divide the whole equation by this coefficient. So we'll divide 3x squared by 3, x by 3, and the 3 by 3. That gives us x squared minus x over 3 equals a 1. Now we can complete the square using the same process. Take the coefficient of x, in this case it's 1/3, divide by 2 and you square it. Negative 1/3 divided by 2 is negative 1/6. Squared is 1 over 36. So you add that 1 over 36 to both sides. Now we have to find the factors of this. If you remember from the expansions that I showed you earlier, we said whatever is there inside the parentheses, that's what goes with the x. So you'll have x minus 1/6 squared. Or you can take the square root of this number, 1 over 36. Square root of that is 1/6. And I told you, if you have a minus sign, you'll have a minus sign right there. So it's x minus 1/6 squared equals 1 plus 1 over 36. That is nothing but 37 over 36. Now we'll take square root on both sides. That gives us x minus 1/6 equals plus or minus square root of 37 over 36. So the denominator is a perfect square. We can say square root of 36 is a 6. And we'll add 1/6 to both sides. So this gives you x equals 1/6 plus or minus square root of 37 over 6. Or it's 1 plus or minus square root of 37 over 6. Or the other form would be 1 plus square root of 37 over 6 and 1 minus square root of 37 over 6. Hope that helps.